Hi everybody, I hope you're doing marvellously well. Today we had the beginning of a very exciting week where we're going to be honouring the songwriters Goffin and King. We have recently started working with our very, very good friend, well, one of my best friends in the world, Louise Goffin, who, of course, whose parents wrote some of the greatest songs of all time. In fact, they are the second most successful songwriters of all time after the one and only Lennon and McCartney. Goffin and King Foundation is specifically designed to bring music education to everybody, regardless of economics, regardless of race and creed, religion, you name it, age, gender. It is an incredible foundation, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it and to be able to support it. So what we're doing today is we're taking a song, actually not a Goffin and King song, we're taking a song written by Todd Rundgren called I Saw the Light, which Louise covered, and Dave Way is going to take us through the mixing of the song. If you stay tuned this week, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to watch how this song was created. But best of all, for those of you that are avid producers, engineers, and mixers, you can download the multi-tracks. So in today's video, there's going to be a full mix breakdown by Dave Way for free for all of you. The only thing we ask is that if you can, just donate anything you can, whether it be $1 or $1 million, whatever it is, whatever small amount you can donate, just please donate it to the Goffin and King Foundation down below. We were very, very blessed to start working with a school, for instance, in a very underprivileged part of Los Angeles, and we wish to bring this to all over the country. So we're just getting started. Please help us out, Goffin and King Foundation down below. We have some incredible ambassadors that are standing behind us, and we've been very, very blessed. If you look here, Eric will be displaying all of the amazing ambassadors. So without further ado, let's get into the free mixing course with Dave Way breaking down Louise Goffin's cover of I Saw the Light, written by the rather wonderful Todd Rundgren.
First, we gotta spray some hit spray on everything to
exactly.
guarantee us some viewers. There's like 10 viewers right there.
10 viewers less.
Yes,
10 viewers less.
10 viewers less, exactly, yeah. Hi everybody, Dave Way here at the Way Station for this breakdown of Louise Goffin singing the Todd Rundgren song, I Saw the Light in Your Eyes. This is a very cool version of a classic song. It's like a Motown-y kind of version, I would call it, with Louise singing. And I think it's a great choice just because the original song, the original version of it, is very reminiscent of Carole King chords and melodies and stuff. So I think Louise was the perfect choice to sing this. And my friend Fernando Perdomo produced it along with Darian from Brian Wilson. Forgive me, Darian, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. And Louise. So the three of them are producers on this, and they came up with a great kind of Motown feel.
Late last night, I was feeling something wasn't right. There was not another soul inside, only you, only you. So we walked along, though I knew that there was something wrong, and the feeling hit me oh so strong about you. I saw the light in your eyes, in your eyes. Though we had our fling, I just never would suspect a thing till that little bell began to ring in my head, but I tried
love that funky bass playing there at the end. As you can probably see, this is a very tight little production. And when I opened this up and I looked, I was like, I'm not doing anything in this mix. How am I going to talk about this mix? Because I didn't do anything. And the first thing I noticed, well, outside of the fact that I don't even know how many tracks this is, but I'm guessing it's like, 30 tracks. And there's 2 drum kits or one full drum kit and another one that's just kind of gives it a bit of the Phil Spector, multiple people in a room kind of vibe. Some tambourines, 1 stereo string riff, some claps that I added actually in the mix. There's Fern playing the bass, a guitar track, a telly, a sitar track, which you've heard, that cool, very cool guitar solo, a sitar solo, piano vibes, glockenspiel, another guitar track, lead vocal and some background vocals, and a master fader. Unusual for me, I've got everything just going to the mix output, 1 stereo output. Very often I have aux sends that I'm bussing things into and then treating things as stereo groups and doing some stereo processing. If you'll notice, there's no aux sends on this mix. Any reverb that's on there is as an insert. And actually, in this case, and I kind of think this is cool, that very much of them are mono reverbs, or at least the lead vocal is. So it's, let's look at that for a second. Looking at the processing, just some drums, my favorite plugin of all time, which I've told Andrew many times, Shep's Omnichannel. Use this all the time, everywhere. And it's all over the drums. It looks like I'm triggering a kick drum here with slate trigger. But the rest of it is so natural. I've added some spring reverb on the room track. I'll solo up the drums a little bit here, you can hear. So that's the main kit. And I've kept them very mono. You'll see I took the overhead tracks and put them right up the middle. We wanted this to feel old, but vintage, however you want to call it. I treated it almost as if it's just a a mono drum kit. But then here's this other kit. And that's just kind of doing a little extra kick and snare flamming throughout the rest of the track. So it gives you a little extra bigness. You'll hear some flams. That's part of the charm. Very Detroit bass playing from Fernando. Sitar. Now, I think I didn't add any of this reverb. These were both printed with the reverb, which is great. Always love that. Sound is right there. I don't have to do anything. I'm not EQing the Telecaster guitar at all. Probably just taking out a little carving on the sitar. Nothing big. The bass looks like I'm adding some distortion, as always. Yeah, see, that's the cleanness. Very nice. I really messed up that bass sound. It was perfect to start with, and I just made it dirtier. But the thing is, that's in solo. You can see how the distortion really makes it pop out. The harmonics are there. It was there for a reason, and there's even more because it's also going through. That's very different than what we ended up with. But it's a great bass sound to start with.
In my
piano, a Darian played, I believe. It does say DS, so now I'm thinking it's Darian. And that sounds like a real piano. I can hear some room in there that makes me believe that. Some vibes at the bottom of the fade. Here's the other guitar, Dream guitar. Again, printed with the reverb and delay. Makes our mixing job easy. Now we've got the lead vocal. So this probably has more processing than anything else on the mix, but that's not unusual. Again, starting off with Andrew Sheps. Some de-essing going on. Good deal of compression in opto mode. A lot of EQ. And some more saturation to help us make this feel like it's been to tape a couple of times. A little ADT, as you saw there. Some spring reverb in mono. And then a little more compression. Mostly a little extra, taking out some bottom, little mid-range EQ. Swing it, Fern. Very nice. Not sure who's singing the backgrounds. Really just a little compression on there, no EQ, little ADT, and the Abbey Road reverb. Very nice. There's another background track there. Let's see what those guys are doing. Again, kind of the same treatment on this. Same chamber and ADT. That's over here. But see, again, like here, let's talk about this for a second. What I love about this production and how Fern has delivered it to me for mixing is that all these, vocals have been bounced down to a stereo pair that they, the balance is there as they like it, leaving it for me to add some extra effects and stuff. But I know that like the basic thing is right there. I don't have to, I had a track the other day I was mixing and there was like 80 tracks of background vocals. And, it's just, it takes, hours just to kind of understand what everybody's doing and looking to see where everything is going and how to fit it. Of course, it's delivered to me with everything at 0 and everything panned up the middle. And it's like, it's a lot of work just to get the balance of the background vocals when I'm sure it was being monitored at some point during the production with choices of panning and choices of EQ if there needs to be some, particular kind of style of EQ or filtering going on to make one part contrast another, rather than leaving all these decisions for the mixer. Most often the production team has ideas about this stuff and it should have ideas about it and just go with it. Just put it in and if for some reason it's not working, we can always go back, but let's go move forward as much as we can. And what you see in this production and why there's only 30 faders here or whatever is because these decisions, the reverb on the guitar has been figured out already, and the balance of the background vocals has been figured out, and the reverb on the sitar, and all these things have kind of been thought about already. So I don't have to reinvent it when I put it up. It kind of speaks to me, and I can mix it very quickly and instinctually, because as you can see, like I didn't have to spend a lot of time just to get it to sound like the record, because you put up the faders and it's very much there. I spent more time just trying to make it sound more vintage maybe than what it was, and making some choices as to what I could do that would amplify that feeling. Because I know in my discussion before, that's with Fern and with Louise, that's what they were hoping to get out of the mix. So I think we got that. And I'll have to say also, one of the things that I felt like in this song and in general, when you're trying to make things sound a bit more vintage, is back then the drums were not always so loud. They're not as big and upfront and punchy as they are in modern records. And so, I could have tried to pump them up and make it sound more contemporary, and that probably still would have had a vintage feel to it, but it might not have sounded as authentically vintage, I'm guessing. So that's something I was conscious of like finding the place where the drums are going to sit, where they're there, and they're very hypnotic, these drums. They don't change much. It's the same beat through the whole song. So all the interesting stuff is happening in the answers, the sitar answers and the background vocal answers. So those are the things that you want to kind of push up. And the other thing that I know Louise and Fern wanted was the vocal to be right up front all the time. So it's very hard to have the vocal right up front all the time and the drums to be up front when you've got a pretty dense production instrumentally too. Let's take a look at the drums a little bit further and see particularly what this kick drum sample is doing. It might answer a question as to why I did it, but I'm sure there was a reason. Here's what we ended with. We've got, right, so there's two mics. That's the in mic. I'm gonna put this down, it's at 45. So that's the out mic. All right, so I can see why. It's pretty clicky between the two of them, and I wanted to add some kind of meat, something below to give it some beef. And so I added, here's a bunch of, let's see, here's a Stuart Copeland kick that's in there a little bit. Am I allowed to talk about this stuff? Let's see. Here's the kick drum from John Lennon's Isolation. How about that? I think it's probably lifted from the record, which I guess, we're allowed to do. We've been doing that. I've been doing that since the 80s. Every record we've made, practically has a kick drum or a snare drum that's been lifted from a record, It's not going to sound like the record. It's just a kick drum. But, and it's one of many kick drums in here. There's like about 6 kick drums being blended here. Oh, no, 4 kick drums, it looks like. But the main one is a JB kick, which is not James Brown, but it's a great drummer I've worked with who's, this one's what I use for kind of low end. I use this sample a lot. Yeah, see, that's a knocky kick. So, that's what we're getting from that one. This Stuart Copeland one is very clicky. That's why we're using that. So right there, you've kind of got the 3 elements of a kick drum that, just the balancing those 3 things, I could get a bunch of different kick drum sounds because I've got the basic elements to what I mostly need. And then I might have some other ones. This one's, let's see, this is from a sample library. Yeah, that's a nice kick drum. But it's got a lot of attack. And that's it. The other ones are all muted. But now that's it by itself. So now I ended up being at 45%, I think. So we're still using some of the original kick drum in there, along with the in mic. Snare on the top. Bottom snare, just some compression really. no EQ on either of these. This one's not doing anything. I probably just put it on there, but it didn't do anything. What is this? This is the hi-hat. A little compression and de-essing to kind of keep that in control. That's the rack tom. And I didn't, sometimes, like it looks like I did on the floor tom here, I will go through and mute where the drum's not being hit. And it actually could be possible. Yeah, there's just a couple of floor toms. So I went through with strip silence. If you don't know strip silence, that's in your Pro Tools thing here. Is it under track? I think I have to stop in order to do that. Yeah, strip silence under edit. And there you can go through and kind of, if I wanted to do it on the rack tom, see, do a little pre-roll, a little post-roll on it, and it will now strip. It looks for the peaks, and you can adjust the threshold. I'm at -10, so that it'll look for any hits. And there's not many. There's only a couple more here. So now I'd adjust that to where it's just grabbing the hits that I need, and then I hit strip, and it strips away everything but those, and it has a little bit of pre-roll and a little bit of post-roll. I can go through and put some fades on them if I want, as I did here. But that, if sometimes you don't want any of that leakage in your drums, particularly in modern records and very tight, busy drumming, particularly if there's like 4 toms, you can get just a buildup of all this ringing. So, but I chose to leave the rack tom alone, and I just cleaned up the floor tom. So, leaving that in helps it sound, still like it's an old track. And we've got some overheads. As I said, I pan the overheads into the middle, and then there's a room track. Let's hear the room track, which I added some spring to. So that's really my echo for the drums. I'm basically. But what's nice is, like, rather than sending from the snare drum, I'm sending the whole kit in a sense, and it's not like, it's kind of filtered sounding because there's not big low end in it, and there's not a lot of high end in it. So this is a good choice to send into a reverb, because it's going to give you mostly mid-range and the whole kit as a whole.
But I won't do it anymore.
All right, so now here's our other kit. And again, this has some treatment on it. I didn't add any verb to that. So you got a little spring on it, sounds like. I don't know how they recorded that, but they added that in. And what's this other one? Room mic. I pan that off to the right a little bit. Stereo tambourines. Tambourines, we wanted to keep that pretty featured. A lot of the feel is in that.
Best, it's not something that I...
These claps I added, and I took 2 different ones. So let's get rid of strip silence. That's interesting. Now I can hear all the clicks on those. There we go. Oh, well. Is that 2? Yeah, so here's one of them. That's a very dry, close, cloppy kind of clap. And this one's very brash and reverby. And I mute those and do some rides on those as the track is going. Pumping them up a little more, I think, in the solo, probably, if I remember. Yeah, a little louder in the solo. So then you'll see there's a lot of rides, If I like to do a lot of rides, and I just kind of do them as I'm feeling them. And sometimes you look at the faders and they look crazy, but I try not to look at them I just try and listen and see if it's sounding good. So if I looked at all these, I see, a lot of these have rides, all the drums, starting from about the chorus, they get bumped up and then down again, probably in the verse. Actually up just at the transition of the verse, you can see. The other drum kit's not getting any rides because that's just almost imperceptible in the mix, really. Tambourines, a couple of rides at the end. The claps, good deal. The bass is being ridden a good deal. The guitars, the piano, and the vocal all the way through the song. You can see that. And these are rides with the fader here, not with the mouse. And even the master fader is being ridden too. So, and that's something I think a lot of people don't do. I'm not sure why. I know I didn't do it for the longest time. I probably spent a good 10 years mixing before somebody said, well, let's ride up the master fader in the choruses. Can you do that? I don't know if you're allowed to do that, Warren. No, it's like, of course, why not? And then I started hearing stories about Gus Dudgeon and famous, records you made where they're doing all kinds of rides on the fader all the time. They're getting to mastering and they're still riding the faders. So I started to not be afraid of riding the master fader. I'm not afraid of doing anything, I think, as long as it feels musical.
What about automating the threshold of the compressor?
All the time, yes. And EQ and the de-esser in particular, I do that a lot, where you've got a de-esser that is gentle, but in one spot it needs a little extra, or the other way where you're doing some pretty heavy de-essing and then, it's too much right here. I can hear it, go in and change the threshold again. I automate EQs all the time. I don't know if we're doing any of that on this record, but that's quite often something I'll do. Automating filters on and off. Obviously, you're gonna automate reverbs and as far as the level going into a reverb. But for something like this, where there's no aux sends, it's all on an insert. I'll play with the mix blend on the reverbs or the delays. So. But I like to do a lot of rides. I find that that's where all the kind of musicality in a mix comes from that. And it's where you get a mix that just doesn't feel static and it feels like it's alive and it feels like, I'm just noticing that guitar player is really cooking now. You didn't really notice it the first half of the song, but it's somewhere around the second verse or the bridge that you start to really take notice of this guy or this part. And I think that's when you think about how records were made in the 60s and even the 70s pre-automation, it was made with 4 guys with their hands on the faders through the whole song, and so all these things were very human feeling. They weren't rigid. They would, it would be up a little more this time than it was the last time, and so things don't sound quite as symmetrical. Well, let's look at the master bus because, as you can see, there's quite a few plugins. This is more plugins than I usually use on the master bus, I'll have to confess. But I'm sure it all started with Andrew Shep's Omnichannel. And as you can see, I'm basically just doing a little top end, very top end, like 12, 13K, a little bit of mid-range around 1K or so, 1.2. That's it. But then there's some parallel compression going on in VCA mode, where I take the mix and bring that down to like 66%. So here, you want to see what it sounds totally different with all this stuff off? Let's see. Actually, it doesn't sound all that different. The levels kind of cranking, but I'll put them on one at a time. All right, so we knocked down some of the level there for sure. because all that compression. This is heavy compression going on, but it's at 66. It's not there. So we're really, we're knocking the level way down. There's a little, there's a little de-essing going on. Talk about that for a second. I remember the first time I went to a mastering session, and I saw the mastering engineer using a de-esser on the mix. And I said, "What are you doing? You got a DBX 902 on the mix bus, 2 of them?" He said, "Yeah, do it a lot. Do it all the time." And, mastering engineers, particularly older mastering engineers who came from the vinyl cutting days, there were 2 enemies for cutting vinyl, and one was pronounced S's, and the other was too much bass buildup in the low end. And so those are 2 things that mastering engineers were doing a lot more back then, just to get things to be able to get on vinyl as loud as they could. De-essing your master bus is not a bad thing. Here's some Kramer tape, one of my favorite tape plugins. And basically I'll turn this plugin on and just play around with this. Let me see where I'm at, 4.1. Just a little. I'm going to give it some drive. I don't want to go too far where it starts to distort and collapse. Somewhere around there, it felt good. Now we've got Soothe, which maybe is doing a little more like, de-essing basically. I've got it pretty gentle here because as you can see, it's doing just a little bit, but I've also got it at 27%. So all these are in it so far. I'm sure the reason for this, why I was doing it, is because I was trying to get it to feel very soft and tape-like in the mid-range and upper mids. So these are all basically tape emulation kind of stuff, right? Then, and again, these are all pretty subtle. Let's knock the level down a lot. That's very subtle. You can keep that out, actually. And let's see, so then we got C4, and that's basically just controlling a little bit of bass stuff. The other 3 bands are bypassed. I'm really just compressing the lows, and you can see it's barely touching it. So that's just a little protection, really. This is a cool plugin, very vintage sounding compressor. I like this. Shall we say Fairchild-ish? And then probably play around with the release a bit, find a place. We could have a fast attack, slow attack, or medium. I kept it at medium. That closes it down a little too much, I think. That's still pretty snappy. Sounds great too. That's with a fast release. This keeps it sounding smooth, not too aggressive. I think one of the things we wanted to do with this, and this is just a general kind of overall feeling that we're looking for, is, this is a kind of relentless beat, and it could be aggressive sounding, and we didn't want this to sound aggressive. This is a love song. This is a feel good. There should be a gentleness to it, I think. And so, in choosing something like the release time and the attack time on the bus compressor, we're affecting that relationship and that emotion. And so I'm trying to, when I'm listening and comparing, trying to say, ask myself, is this feeling too aggressive now, or is it still loving sounding, you know? And there's one more plug in here, which is a little Pro EQ, adding just a little bit of high end, and then doing kind of what we were talking about with vinyl cutting, dropping off everything very sharply at 23 hertz. We don't need anything down there. Yeah, so there you go. That's the master bus. Like I said, it's a lot of stuff, actually. I probably could have accomplished a lot of it with just Sheps. Sometimes I'll be listening to something and it sounds fine, it sounds good, and it's like, oh, let me just try this. And rather than tweaking the Sheps plugin that I've got in, I'll just put another plugin on that I can bypass if I don't like it, rather than having to go back and reset the parameters. Laziness, I think. But also, it just kind of lets you move forward. And then if you don't like how you've moved, you could just, if later on I decided, you know what, it kind of went to shit when I added that C4, let me go back and take that out. And this way I can just disable the plugin rather than trying to look back at my session at where I had things set 2 hours ago. I've had the privilege of working with Louise. We actually cut 2 records a couple of years ago. And we had some stellar musicians here, and we recorded and mixed it all here at the Way Station. And she is, like, you know, not only a great songwriter, but great singer, great producer. She's a sweetheart of a person, one of my favorite people of all time working with. And, you know, when you're making records, particularly 2 records, I think we did like 24 songs. You spend a lot of time really getting to know each other musically and then personally. And I've like I said, I've been privileged to work with Louise on quite a few records, and it's always a pleasure. For this one, they recorded it, I'm guessing at Fern's for the most part. At least Fern did his stuff at his place. Darian, I'm sure, did his stuff at his place. Caitlin Wolfberg did the string overdub. She probably did that at her place. I think it's a great way to work, honestly. There's a lot of good that can come out of it. You know, very different than everybody being in the room, but still just as creative in a different way. At one point, I had started it kind of feeling a bit more aggressive. And so as I listened to it, there were 2 things happening for me. The feeling of it was getting a little rock feeling, and also the vocal was just not taking over the way we had hoped. So I kind of started to push the vocal up a bit, pull down the drums a bit, and then I think things started to really kind of fall into place a bit more. So then it was a matter of goosing up things here and there, you know, turn up this sitar in the solo for sure, and some of the other little turnarounds, and turn up the drums in the turnarounds. And, you know, transitions are always places that need a little love usually, you know, because you're building excitement, and then, you know, you're going to come out of the chorus into the next verse, and it's kind of ramp up a bit, then come down. But I can do that with the individual tracks, also with the master fader, you know, and a combination of both. So I think that's about all I can tell you about this mix. I know we were all pleased with it. I think Todd even heard it and liked it. I know he and Fern are friendly. So yeah, and you know, hopefully it gives you a glimpse into something that's very simple, and you know, trying not to overthink things. And where I am trying to think about things, it's all kind of bigger picture stuff rather than technical kind of things. So, you know, if I'm saying to myself, I want it to sound more retro, what can I do? What's the simplest way to do that, you know? Or if I'm trying to think of how it should not feel too aggressive, what's the easiest way to do that, you know? But those kind of questions that you ask yourself all the time, and they're all related to how the song should come across, what kind of feelings you're trying to evoke. Then, you know, we got all these tools in our arsenals. You just pull some out, start going for it. And if that's working, great, move on to the next one. If it's not working, try something else. But try and move forward. I like to move quickly and not overthink things too much. Then step back, have a listen on my AirPods, or listen in the car, or listen in the living room here, or listen on my phone. And that usually tends to inform me in some way of what else I could do that would make it get over better. And then you go in just to tackle some of those things. So I like to just kind of work, step back, make some adjustments, step back again, maybe two, then get some feedback from the artist, producer, and see where that leads you. All right, so that leads us to the end of our show. Thanks for coming to the Way Station. Hope to see you guys again soon. All right, thanks.